Twilight. We all know it. We all know it. I remember when Twilight was the biggest thing in the world. Everyone was talking about it in one form or another. I mean, Team Edward, Team Jacob. That was kind of the extent of conversation. But like a lot of these YA franchises that were coming out in the late 2000s and early 2010s, most of which were directly inspired by Twilight, the saga just kind of disappeared after it ended. And yet I've always had this nagging desire to go back and watch all of these movies. I'm not sure why. I have a lot of thoughts like this, and I've been advised to tell them to a therapist, but who needs that? So I decided to spend a whole day watching the entire Twilight saga in one go, which is a Herculean task that I obviously could not do alone. So what can you tell me about your history with Twilight?
Okay, so I read all of the Twilight books in 5th or 6th grade.
I also read all the books when I was in about grade 5. I shouldn't have been allowed to do that.
So I watched the movies like as they came out. But the only one I saw in theaters was the last one.
And then in quarantine, I've been forced to watch the whole series probably 3 times.
It's going to be like mostly nostalgia for me. So I feel like I'm going to like them and I'm going to forgive a bunch of the stuff that we're about to make fun of them for. That is my expectation going in. I feel like they're going to be bad and I'm going to love them still.
I think I will see them in a new light just because every time you watch these, you sort of have an existential crisis. Really, it's dark times here. I haven't been up this early in so long.
So, ladies, gentlemen, vampires, werewolves, freakish demons, CGI babies, and other, please enjoy the Twilight Marathon. And what better place to start than with...
I genuinely think after watching that, if Edward Cullen was here, he could not read my mind either because there's nothing in it.
I feel like Twilight as a whole has this reputation of being, one of the worst things ever, and that's more just because teenage girls liked it and media like that is just hated by everyone else. But based off just this movie, I think if you were to just watch this, you would think it's okay. It's not that boring because the performances are pretty out there, I guess is the word I would use. there are some choices made. They do capture a certain teenage awkwardness that I think works. Kristen Stewart is playing awkward very well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Playing.
Kristen Stewart is the worst actress. She's the least suited to play Bella of everyone. If Charlie played Bella, I think it would have been better. Honestly, if Taylor Lautner, he didn't even have to change wigs. He could play Bella. I just don't know. She delivers every joke like she was just asked to introduce herself to the class with a fun fact and she has social anxiety.
Aren't people from Arizona supposed to be, really tan?
Yeah. Maybe that's why they kicked me out.
It gives me hope that if she can go to a small town in Washington and immediately become the most interesting and beloved person at her school, that if I ever move to the Pacific Northwest, I'm going to be a hit.
It was also kind of an interesting exercise in nostalgia because so many things came back to me, just lines and moments and images that I remember being the hugest thing when I was in, I want to say grade 6 when I read all these books.
I saw lines I didn't notice before. I don't know. I remembered such classics as How You Liking the Rain, Girl.
How you liking the rain, girl?
But I didn't really clock interactions like when Edward immediately after asks her if she's enjoying the rain.
So you're enjoying the rain?
And they left that in the movie. That was in the book and they kept it.
The most awkward shot, I think, was when Edward and Jacob's dad, Mr. Highgate, what's his name? I don't know. They were...
It's a bold guess.
No, their name is Black. That's what it is. I don't know where I got that from. My point was the foreshadowing for the plot of New Moon that were like shoehorned in were so out of place, and just if you don't know what's going on with New Moon, just comes off as blatant racism, and you have no reason.
He's just driving by like he's gonna hate crime.
You have no reason to think that Edward isn't just like the biggest racist. So anyways, I'm Team Edward.
Unfortunately, I have been since the day the books came out, Team Edward.
Boo.
Yeah, no.
Yes.
I read them and I was like, Team Edward. I didn't even have like Robert Pattinson to look to and be like, he's cute. I was reading about a serial killer essentially, and I was like, yeah, I'm 12. This works for me. This is really doing it.
I mean, I always say this with YA stuff when I revisit it, but I really don't get why this became such a huge phenomenon. Like, I know it's not for me, but, you know.
I've been explaining this, but the place where Twilight comes from, which is why it is hated and also beloved, is that teenage girls have no outlet for their bloodlust or horniness, where teenage boys are given video games and expected to watch porn in that, and all we have is these deranged YA things. So we have to cram all of that into these movies. It's like all the sexual frustration becomes, here's a vampire that will kill me someday. Like, I had friends who wrote One Direction fan fiction, and one of them ended in a murder-suicide, and one of them involved a coma. Like, selling yourself to One Direction was a main theme. Twilight is one of the less unhinged YA properties. And the thing is, the first one, they're trying to ease you into it. So they're like, he's pretty, but he's a bad boy. He's got a tortured past. And by the end, they're like, the whole world wants to kill her. Someone's going to marry a baby. Like, it just goes off the rails so quickly.
We're going to work our way there.
I've never watched this in the morning before when I was still awake and sober.
In a vacuum, this movie works pretty well. It's solid. It's like a solid YA movie. I like Billy Burke a lot. He was the main star, I think, really. Billy Burke is the star.
Charlie was my favorite. I love Charlie. Dad goals. When he cocked the shotgun when he met Edward.
All right. Bring him in.
That was my favorite part of the movie.
And I feel like it's definitely all going to be downhill from here. Okay, Twilight. I was going to say Breaking Dawn, New Moon. That's not correct. Twilight New Moon is what we're talking about.
It started very promisingly. I was very excited. There were parts that were funny on purpose, which was crazy. Because while the first movie is much funnier, none of it is intentional. So it was really nice to see them make jokes that worked and weren't said by Bella.
And why are there that many zombie movies anyway? So if it's supposed to like draw a parallel about leprosy, my cousin had leprosy. It's not funny.
I liked that Bella was suicidal. I think she was right. Probably cut that. No, depressed Bella getting on motorcycles and stuff was the first time she's been even remotely interesting to me. So really wish that hadn't ended in being nothing.
Yeah, this was a lot more boring than the first one. You can really tell the director's changed because any semblance of style or really any effort, that's all gone. It's just a lot of bland yearning, just a lot of Bella just being sad and acting depressed and characters telling her she's depressed and to fix it because it's bumming them out too.
Hey, what the hell's wrong with you?
The first half was a lot better than the second half, I felt like. As like everything after the like wolf fight when Jacob first transforms was like very slow and drawn out.
It must be nice never getting cold.
It's a wolf thing.
I really missed the blue. I missed the blue filter. I missed it looking unique. It just looks so nothing in this. It's just like the most boring possible version of Twilight, which that's a low bar.
I'm coming out of this movie with a change of heart, okay? I'm firmly Team Charlie now.
Of course, what do I know? I'm just a terminal bachelor.
I don't know how Bella maintains any sort of social circle because she's incapable of basic human functionality, it seems. Poor Mike. Mike really got the raw deal.
Mike.
Justice for Mike. I personally, I was Team Jacob, and now I'm leaning Team Mike.
The movie should be about Mike and Charlie. Mike could be his deputy. Charlie could be a mentor. He helps him get over Bella by making Mike realize he's too good for her, and Anna Kendrick is right there and busty as hell.
So we can fairly assume you're Team Charlie.
I'm Team Charlie, although they also made the jock character the worst looking man in the film, presumably so there would be no Team Mike. Because honestly, if I was watching and Mike was even like 10% more attractive, I'd be like, oh, why are you spending this time in all this supernatural drama? Like, just date your friend. He's there. He asked you to the prom. Why are you saying no so you can go out with an anemic British person? I'm allowed to say it. I'm going out with an anemic British person. Make better choices.
I feel like whenever they get into the action stuff, it was surprisingly kind of fun, and that stuff was clearly thrown in for any dads or dates who were dragged along at the time by the intended audience for this movie, who does not care about action sequences at all.
Please! No, please!
But there isn't much interesting romance to fall back on, because it's just a lot of Jacob really wanting to be with Bella, and Bella just kind of seeming really checked out. Really, everyone seems checked out, not just characters, actors too. They all just didn't seem to want to be there, and I didn't want to be watching it.
Vampire Vatican is like such a good concept, and it was really fun when they were there. But unfortunately, half the time when they were there, we had to listen to Edward be all like, I didn't mean to leave you. It's whatever. I just didn't care. I didn't care at all. I don't care about this couple. I don't care about Edward and his weird conflict about being soulless and going to hell as a vampire. I don't care that Bella thinks she's ready to commit to being a vampire and dating this guy forever after dating him for 3 months when she's 17. We've all been there.
One of them, the long-haired guy at one point, oh, what does he say?
They're all long-haired.
Okay, there's 3 of the Volturi. Arrow's the main one, and then there's the blonde one, and then the other dude.
from Mortal Instruments.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that is Jace from Mortal Instruments. Jace from Mortal Instruments is like, can we get it over with, or something like that.
Let us be done with this.
Right in the middle of like the final scene, like the final confrontation, I was like, I felt that. Like, yes, Jace from Mortal Instruments, I would like to get this over with.
If you combined New Moon, and I only have vague memories of Eclipse, but I feel like if you had merged those two into one movie, that would have been a faster paced and probably more entertaining one. But let's not forget what franchise we're talking about here.
So yeah, there you have it. Those are my thoughts. Looking forward to Eclipse, the wedding.
It's not what happens
The
in
wedding
Eclipse.
movie.
Isn't Breaking Dawn the wedding
Breaking
movie?
Dawn Part 1 is the wedding movie.
I'm expecting a wedding. I'm going to be very disappointed if there's not a wedding in this next movie. Okay, Twilight Eclipse. I feel like with this movie, we are establishing a trend in the series, because I enjoyed the first movie and the second movie was a bit of a slog, and this one was like pretty good.
This was the one that I remembered being the cool one when I was a kid. I remember liking this one a lot, and I think for the most part, I would still say that. It's not good.
Watching this, going in, I was like, Eclipse is the one I remember the least, and therefore it's the worst. And I wasn't actually sure I'd even seen it all the way through. And we were watching it. I was like, I have seen this all the way through. And it's actually excellent. I was watching, I was like, this is the best one. It's like the jokes are actually funny. Jacob actually is a person who's not always annoying.
So for now, you're still you.
You're still you.
Edward looks like a wax figure that's been left in the sun, but other than, he's never going to be good. He's never been better. I mean, you can tell at this point that the light has left Robert Pattinson's eyes. He's really, really not happy with the way his life is going. But yeah, I was watching it and I was like, this is really good. The plot is so much better than I remember. And I was really liking it, and I was excited to come on here and say really nice things about it. And in the 5 minutes since we stopped watching it, I've forgotten it entirely again. I have forgotten everything that happened. all the nice things I was going to say are gone because I have no memory of this entire movie, which maybe is the real commentary on the quality of it. Because say what you will about the first Twilight, but I remember every goddamn second. I remember every awkward pause.
Bella, look. It's a worm. It's a worm.
Look, Bella, a worm. That's a line that'll haunt me. It's not even a full second of the runtime. And Eclipse, which had an actual script and an actual plot, is wiped from my memory, like Jason Bourne style. And all I have left is Twilight the First. Maybe I just don't get it. There's a decent chance. There's a decent chance that it's a wolf thing. So.
It's a wolf thing.
Jacob, awful as always. The highlights of the movie for me were when Bella punched him in the face and broke her own hand. And the other moment that stood out to me was when Bella told him specifically to kiss her.
Kiss me.
And they had their whole moment, which was just for Team Jacob fans. And then moments later, Bella was like, I don't know what happened. I was like, I agree. I don't know what happened either. What are you doing?
I don't know what happened.
You just agreed to marry Edward. And then 5 minutes later.
I'm asking you to kiss me. I don't know what happened.
But I think she was hypnotized by his shirtless body. So, you know, we'll let that one slide. We've all been there.
This is the movie where the majority of focus is put on Team Jacob and Team Edward and that sort of rivalry, but it's barely even there. Like, Bella clearly has next to no interest in Jacob for the majority of the movie until she has a little mental breakdown near the end on the mountain.
I don't know what happened.
That final battle was honestly pretty sick. I thought the stunts were cool. The action was cool. It was more than I expected. And to have my expectations exceeded in any regard in this movie, I will take it. I will take it and run. If I had to rewatch any of these alone, like gun to my head, I don't know what scenario this would be, I would pick Eclipse because it's a pretty breezy watch for Twilight.
Are you thinking you're going to stick to that even after we finish
Already writing
everything?
them off.
I don't expect much from Breaking Dawn because I am...
What about Breaking Dawn Part 2?
You've got a point there. I am aware of the plot of Breaking Dawn, and that is enough to instill me with a deep sense of fear. Has it been a decade since Breaking Dawn Part 1 came out?
Yeah, I guess so.
Holy shit. I had hair back then. I had so much hair. I had so much hair and so much promise. What happened?
You're on sort of a Jacob trajectory here. You had so much hair and so much promise, and then what happened?
If Jacob's anything to go off of, it's gonna work out in the end.
I'll be rejected forever, and then I'll want to fuck
And
a
then
baby?
you'll find a baby. Your soulmate just hasn't been born yet.
Oh, what a horrifying thought. Breaking Dawn Part 1. I mean, it's arguably a movie.
You could probably count on one hand, like, all of the things that happen in this movie. Let's do it. Okay. So, Bella and Edward got married. Bella had a baby. And Jacob became the alpha.
He didn't.
Technically, he made his own pack.
Oh yes, it's 3 people.
Did anything else happen?
She became a vampire.
She became a vampire. Oh, let's talk about her becoming a vampire and how Edward almost let her die when he's the entire reason for her existence. As soon as the baby came out, the baby became his entire reason for existence because Bella was just sitting there dying, and he gave 0 precious moments he spent just looking at the baby while Bella sat there doing her last breaths, literally.
So I would just like to take this moment to ask Stephanie Meyer some questions. One, I realize that as a Mormon, you are against the use of protection, and Edward did not believe he could impregnate Bella. Was there no concern for the fact that being a being with no bodily fluids outside of venom, was she not even remotely concerned for the state of what would happen to her when that, like, ended up there? Like, I realized she didn't think she'd get pregnant, but did she have no concern? She was just like, well, we'll see how this goes. Were people too harsh on Twilight because it was beloved by teenage girls, of course. But on the other hand, she has several other crimes to answer for.
This one is very clearly part one of a bigger story that did not need to be part 1 and 2. There is no single deleted scene in this movie, I imagine, and I could count about an hour of this that could have been cut. So there's your first sign. The idea that they would split this into 2 and still make both of these movies 2 hours is a personal affront.
This movie definitely did not have to be as long as it was, and also did not set up the next movie at all.
I wish I'd had a seizure like all those people in theaters, just so something interesting would have happened in the last 2 hours. The ending is one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen in my life. I'm, of course, talking about the scene where Jacob imprints on the baby. Why didn't they cut that? I mean, I could say that for every other scene in this movie, but especially the baby imprinting.
I don't know with the imprinting rule. In the book, they address it with another member of the tribe. They have him be like, he's talking to Bella, and he goes, oh, look, that guy imprinted on that child next to him. And she goes, whoa, that's pretty fucked up, Jacob. And he goes, no, it's not fucked up, and here's why. It's because he's not going to fuck her as a child. He's going to wait till she's not a child.
Respectfully.
And he's just going to be around all the time, and they'll be really good friends. And then when she's legal, they'll have sex all the time. And we're like, oh yeah, 11-year-old me was reading that. Like, this is a good thing to internalize. But in this movie, they don't do that. They just go, look at all these guys who have imprinted, and one of them is with a child. And they don't explain it at all. And then Jacob imprints on the baby, and we don't really know what that is outside of the montage that says, like, now she's gravity. Your whole world is her.
Gravity. Your whole center shifts.
He's gonna that baby. He's gonna that cursed CGI baby. And you don't know how to feel because it doesn't really look like a baby. But it doesn't really look like an adult.
It very doesn't look like an adult.
I was like, it's something that I think should not be near a human. I guess it's just a wolf thing.
All this fighting isn't good for Bella.
The fetus isn't good for Bella. Say the word, Alice. Baby.
Is Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1 really the best venue to get into the fetus versus baby debate? I imagine Stephanie Meyer probably has some opinions about that. And I don't want to hear them. Ironically, this movie does make a pretty decent case for abortion in the case of a demon vampire baby. I think it's a fair call when your entire body is rotting away and you look worse than Gollum.
You look terrible.
Billy was... No, Charlie... Billy... I get it confused because Billy Burke plays Charlie and Billy is also a character and Billy Black is his name. So it's like... Every time I try to think about who's who, I almost have a seizure.
I think you mean
Billy Highwater. All they wanted to do was have a wedding scene and have a pregnancy scene and have a wedding night scene wherein they flash to 6 different occurrences of missionary.
Jacob's little character arc into becoming the alpha, that's something. And if the movie had put a little more focus onto that, if Twilight gave a single shit about Jacob in general, you'd think that all 3 points in a love triangle would have equal importance, equal relevance, equal amounts of character. But Bella's just kind of around, and Edward's just kind of obsessed with Bella, and Jacob seems to have much more to deal with.
I don't know if the next one's going to be good or not, but it's definitely going to be better than this. So the bar is, it's definitely roller coaster. So we're going to roller coast into Breaking Dawn Part 2. See you there. All right. So I made it through. That was fantastic.
Well, that was the first time I saw the Twilight Saga properly end, and it was a very appropriate ending.
Edward was much more tolerable in this movie, which I think might be because Robert Pattinson saw the end in sight and found the will to live and go on because he was so close. Seeing a man about to be free of his burdens, it makes me very happy. I just graduated and that's what it felt like, though this is honestly perhaps more of a relief.
That movie was much better than Breaking Dawn Part 1.
Nessie? You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster?
Had the most like quotable moments and the most cheesy goodness. And I was definitely sick of most of the main characters by the time we got to the end. I think that's what made the last one better, because they introduced so many characters.
I really liked all the new vampires. As mentioned again, we were very sick of every other person in this movie. And the new ones were so fun. Lee Pace was amazing. Michael Sheen was the craziest. He just showed up and was like, I don't need any direction. I know exactly what I'm about to do.
Hear strange heart.
The crazy to boring ratio in this is at their most extreme, and I feel like it could not have possibly been more boring when it was boring and more crazy when it was crazy. Like the final battle sequence. I felt like I used to feel when I was watching Marvel movies. It was like, this is it. This is why I watch movies. This is the apex. And the only issue is that after this honestly kind of incredible battle sequence, it was all a dream. And everyone's fine, and no one dies, and everyone's happy, and there are no consequences. There are no stakes, really. There's nothing to emotionally connect to beyond two people who have been telling each other and everyone else they're in love for 5 movies straight, and yet I still have not found one interaction where they seemed to like being around each other. And Jacob's gonna f*** their kid, so it's like that's just another layer that you throw on there, and it just makes it all the weirder. I wish they had kept her as like a weird CGI person like they did for the majority of the movie, which really didn't help me connect with them wanting to save this child, because I was very much on team kill that thing. When they brought in that guy to say, oh, actually, it's cool to date like an immortal child. I was fully grown when I was 7 years old.
I became full grown 7 years after my birth.
That somehow did not reassure me.
I think if Stephanie Meyer had had less control, they could have done something kind of cool with these movies if they got to change more stuff like that, because the battle scene was weirdly great.
Yeah, then you kind of remember after you get over the majesty of the battle that this is the end of a story that we've been watching all day. And then when you think about the details of that story, really any of them, you wonder why they even bothered with any of this. I feel like I wanted to learn something about Twilight on a deeper level. I wanted to find some way to understand this franchise like I never had. And I'm still kind of wondering the same thing I was wondering after the first Twilight, which was, why was this a hit? Why is this the one that took off?
Did you think, going into this, you were hoping to understand Twilight on a deeper level? Did you on any level expect to come out of this liking it or getting it?
I wondered if that might happen. I kind of like watching dumb YA shit like this. I always kind of get a little thrill out of it. Mostly it's nostalgia, but sometimes you can see these little sparks, these little points of promise, and Twilight is filled to the brim with them, but it almost intentionally refuses to deliver on that promise. It seems to go out of its way to tell the most boring story while all this tangentially really interesting stuff is happening around them. It's just kind of a shame because there's some good stuff in here and it's buried underneath this dull as dishwater story about nothing and nobody.
They did a much better job with the vampire sex this time. I really appreciated the new director daring to show a second position.
It was the same director.
Well, I appreciate his growth.
The final message of the franchise is just being a vampire rocks. and I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with that.
I feel like okay about it. I feel like they could have done like a really good job with the movies. Like the content was there, even though we've
Are you
been
sure?
the books. Maybe I need to go back and read the books now, but I remember the books being pretty good. The movies are like passable. They're enjoyable to watch. Three of the 5 were enjoyable to watch. So I give it a 3 out of 5.
I feel like there just hasn't actually been anything like it. Everything since this has either been a Twilight or a Hunger Games ripoff, and nothing, not that Twilight was good, but it did what it did as well as it could do. My friends and I have this thing, we call things the teenage dirtbag of whatever, because we're like, teenage dirtbag is maybe not the best song in the world, but it couldn't be any better at what it is. Like, there's nothing you could change that would make teenage dirtbag better, because it's kind of as good as it's gonna get. And that's how I more or less feel about the first Twilight movie at the end of the day. I don't think you could really improve it. I'd say the same for Breaking Dawn Part 2. New Moon, there was room for improvement. They did something. They knew they didn't have to do much, and they lived down to those expectations, and I respect that.
This was a long, magical day, and I'm so glad you guys could be here to share this experience with me. 2 out of 5 of these movies are pretty solid.
Which 2?
The first one in Eclipse.
You're not going to put Part 2 on your...
I liked the battle in Part 2. I could take or leave everything else.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
That last little montage felt nice at the end. I don't know. I liked it.
All great stories end with either dance sequences or musical montages, and Twilight went with musical montage, and so I think there's only one way to end this video.
Uh-oh.
Somebody once told me the world was gonna roll me. Ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. She was looking kind of dumb with a finger and a thumb in the shape of a nail on her forehead. The years start coming, they don't stop coming.